Our story is one of neighbors.
I don't pretend that it's going to be easy.
Don't let your anger turn into hatred. We know that hatred is like a fire. When it's allowed to grow, it will consume everything.
Welcome to Orange Wave, the series discussing progressive news, culture, and all things related to the NDP. I am your host, Will Adams, and tonight the one thing on everyone's mind is the Trudeau years in retrospect, as Parliament comes to the close for winter break. The Trudeau years have been tumultuous for everyone, no question about it. From an objective lens, anyone disagreeing with that assessment is probably upper middle class, very well off, or alternatively has some serious rose-colored glasses glued to their face. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau rode into office on a wave of promises. Big ones, shiny ones. And he didn't deliver. Shocking, right? But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We can't downplay the reasons that made Trudeau popular in the first place.
Canadians from all across this great country sent a clear message tonight. It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Coming off of the orange wave of 2011, another Harper majority, and Jack Layton's replacement going from Angry Tom to Submissive Tom in about 2 years, Trudeau was the obvious choice in the 2015 election. Now look, as an NDP supporter, it pains me to say this because Tom Mulcair had admirable traits. And no, I'm not just talking about the fact that he's sexy. But let's be real. Mulcair flip-flopped on legalizing marijuana and running a deficit, instead pledging to balance the budget. That's where Trudeau saw his opening. JT ran on the promise of legalizing pot, electoral reform, and running on a deficit to invest in social programs. After almost 10 years, Canadians were fed up with Harper's hostile, scorched earth policies. They were ready to rebuild social programs, to have those programs paid for. They were ready for change. And for a while, it looked like Trudeau was going to deliver on that. But here we are. Trudeau's government has repeatedly undermined unions, favoring corporations over workers when push comes to shove. And every June, he makes a shiny Pride Month post over on Instagram. But what has he actually done to help the 40% of homeless youth in this country who are members of the LGBTQ community? Spoiler alert, he hasn't done anything. In fact, he hasn't done much to help homeless people, period. When police are forcing people out of tent cities in the dead of winter, leaving them to freeze, JT isn't lifting a finger. And let's not forget his failure to implement meaningful reconciliation measures with Indigenous communities, despite years of promises. And let's not forget the fact that Canadians are being politically persecuted for questioning Canada's stake in the Israel-Hamas war. Despite the fact that Justin Trudeau has pledged to detain Netanyahu if he steps foot on Canadian soil, that has not stopped them from sending billions of dollars in welfare to Israel every year, and firing people and sending police to their doors if they even slightly question any of the horrific war crimes that the state of Israel has committed. So recently, when former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announced her resignation from Trudeau's caucus, it may not have come as much of a shock to you. However, if you read her resignation letter, it actually had some very interesting insight as to why she might have done so. In her letter, she stated the following. It has been the honor of my life to serve in government, working for Canada and Canadians. We have accomplished a lot together. On Friday, you told me you no longer wanted me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in the cabinet. Upon reflection, I have concluded that the only honest and viable path is for me to resign from the cabinet. To be effective, a minister must speak on behalf of the Prime Minister and with his full confidence. In making your decision, you made it clear that I no longer credibly enjoy that confidence and possess the authority that comes with it. For the past number of weeks, you and I have found ourselves at odds about the best path forward for Canada. Our country today faces a grave challenge. The incoming administration in the United States is pursuing a policy of aggressive economic nationalism, including a threat of 25% tariffs. We need to take that threat extremely seriously. That means keeping our fiscal power dry today so we have the reserves we may need for the coming tariff war. That means eschewing costly political gimmicks, which we can ill afford and which make Canadians doubt that we recognize the gravity of the moment. That means pushing back against America First economic nationalism with a determined effort to fight for capital and investment and the jobs they bring. That means working in good faith and humility with the premiers of the provinces and territories of our great and diverse country, and building a true Team Canada response. I know Canadians would recognize and respect such an approach. They know when we are working for them, and they equally know when we are focused on ourselves. Inevitably, our time in government will come to an end. But how we deal with the threat our country currently faces will define us for a generation, and perhaps longer. Canada will win if we are strong, smart, and united. It is this conviction which has driven my strenuous efforts this fall to manage our spending in ways that will give us the flexibility we need to meet the serious challenges presented by the United States. I will always be grateful for the chance to have served in government, and I will always be proud of our government's work for Canada and Canadians. I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues as a Liberal Member of Parliament, and I am committed to running again for my seat in Toronto in the next federal election. This should come as a surprise to absolutely no one. JT treated Freeland terribly, and frankly, Freeland is right about one thing. Trudeau has been making awful decisions lately. Take the GST holiday, for example. Now, I'll admit, I think the GST should be permanently scrapped. But Trudeau is using this temporary tax cut as a cheap gimmick to win votes. He even voted against the NDP's motion to permanently get rid of the GST. It's all optics and no substance. And let's not forget, while Trudeau is handling the threat of President-elect Trump, fairly okay, the hardball move of threatening to cut Ontario's energy and overall exports to the States, that wasn't even JT at all. That was Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario.
We will go to the full extent, depending on how far this goes. We will go to the extent of cutting off their energy, going down to Michigan, going down to New York State, and over to Wisconsin.
Say what you will about Doug Ford, and believe me, I've said plenty. But when you got people like Danielle Smith tripping over themselves to brown-nose the president-elect, Ford's approach looks like realpolitik. Trudeau's response? Weak. Limp, embarrassing. Now, credit where it's due. Trudeau's ability to bounce back is unbelievably impressive. Remember 2019? He won that election because Andrew Scheer was a creepy man dabbling in the anti-abortion lobby. And yes, JT somehow weathered the blackface scandal. Aaron O'Toole could have won if COVID never happened, but through it all, Trudeau held steady enough during the pandemic. Could he have been better? Absolutely. But he wasn't a total disaster. The writing, though, is on the wall. Whether you're left, right, or somewhere in between, unless you're a dyed-in-the-wool Trudeau Loyalist, you've come to the same conclusion as everyone else. Justin Trudeau needs to go.
Trudeau has yet to say that he's resigning. I think it's quite clear that he's not leading the Liberals into the next campaign. How can you do that when very few of your ministers support you, and now close to 50 members of your caucus are asking you to leave?
And it's not just Freeland who thinks this Prime Minister is out of control. Now Housing Minister Sean Fraser has resigned in the middle of a housing crisis. The Minister is resigning, the Finance Minister is resigning in the middle of an economic crisis, and a fifth of his Liberal caucus has lost confidence in him. Justin Trudeau has lost control, and yet he clings to power.
If he wants to stay where he is now, he needs a mandate. And he does not have one as we speak. The only way for him to get that is to call for an election as soon as possible.
And instead of focusing on these issues, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are focused on themselves. They're fighting themselves instead of fighting for Canadians. And for that reason, today I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
So where does that leave us? At a crossroads. Canadians are increasingly drawn to Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, who, let's be real, has no plan. None. The guy's platform is vibes and rage, and that's it.
Ideological language quite frequently.
Like what?
Trudeau's not interested in arresting him, but he's interested in arresting the leader of a democratically elected government, the State of Israel, which has been besieged by terrorists and foreign tyrants attacking its land. It's another example of how radical Justin Trudeau is.
Why would they do a carbon tax? No, you're not changing the subject. I know you want to change the subject. No, I want to ask because you don't want to talk about Trudeau's carbon tax. Trudeau does not have a right to impose his radical gender ideology on our kids and on our country.
He appeals to the lowest common denominator. He endorses the abuse and sexualization of trans kids, wants to shovel billions more into the Israeli expansionist state, and for 20 years as an elected official, the man's only real accomplishment has been getting rich. But if there's one thing Pension Poilievre can do, it's run a campaign. That is where the NDP, under the very steady hand of Jagmeet Singh, need to step up big time. And lately, I've started to see glimpses of it. Remember the time he confronted that heckler?
Behind me, I guess.
Who is it then? Point it out.
I have no idea who it was, buddy. My word.
You sure it's not you?
No, 100%.
You're a coward. You're not gonna say it to my face. That's what's up.
That's Angry Tom right there. And that's exactly what we need. To combat this hostile, right-wing populism, we need a sensible, fired-up alternative. I believe in Jagmeet Singh's vision for this country. But, and this is a big but, he hasn't been selling himself to the people the way he needs to. Hell, so many Canadians still think he's an out-of-touch rich guy. And that's wild to me. His policies, revolutionary. His charisma, through the roof. But the direction just hasn't been there. Here's what I think. Jagmeet Singh needs to lean into the moments that resonate. Sell merch that says, "Say it to my face" with laser eyes on it. Make it your dark Brandon moment. Make that your rallying cry. Because frankly, Canadians are just done compromising. We're done being able to unafford anything. We're done reopening the abortion debate every 8 years. We're done with leaders who don't give a damn about us. No more sell-out Singh. It's time for the juggernaut to rise. And when that happens, and trust me, it will, the new orange wave begins now.